show for you with a lot of information today. We want to make sure that all of you guys are engaged in this process. We have some extraordinary and exciting times. We have an action-packed panel this morning to give you good information, but we always want to make sure that we honor our Lord and Savior every day, and also wrap our arms around those that may have lost loved ones this past week and those that are in need of prayer. And Dr. Reynolds, I know you are a man of many talents, and I'm going to just ask you for a prayer. I'm going to let you, if you would be so kind, to just guide us in prayer this morning.
Yes, sir. Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day of life. We thank you for leadership that is focused on protecting life and guided by principle. And Lord, let us continue to act by your commandment that we love our neighbors as ourselves and that we conduct ourselves with others in mind as we work through this crisis. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And thank you for that. And I'm so excited about our panel today because we have three big red individuals here from Flint Northern High School. I have on the phone with us this morning Congressman Dan Kildee, affectionately known as 76. Good morning, Congressman. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. Good to be home. I just got home last night from Washington, so good to be back here.
Well, I can tell you this, that when you come in from Washington, Dr. Furholden and Dr. Reynolds wants to get you tested. That's one of the things that we've been talking about, making sure when you come in, if you're coming in from out of the country or D.C., we want to make sure that you're COVID tested. We still have 3 up and active testing sites throughout the city of Flint at Bethel United Methodist Church, at Word of Life Church, and also Macedonia Church. So please go get tested. We have other things beyond the nasal swab. The saliva test can be also tested as well. And so we want to make sure we get people tested to make sure we get beyond the pandemic of here. And Dr. Furholden is with us as well, Congressman Kildee, and she is a Flint Northern person as well. Good morning, Dr. Furholden.
Good morning, Mayor Neeley. I wanted to listen to that again.
That's great, and so we have all the intellectual capital here with the Northern Vikings, and so then we round out the table, understanding your ballot with the professor himself, Paul Rozycki from Mott Community College. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Good morning, Mayor. Good to be here.
Great having you here, and you are our residential expert on this. And the topic of today's show is understanding your ballot. Early voting has already begun. If you have your absentee ballot, please fill it out, mail it back in, or drop it off. There will be 5 locations inside the city of Flint where you can actually drop your absentee ballot off to our downtown Flint. There's a drop box right in front of City Hall that says absentee ballot drop off. There is another box right in front of the police department, and so you can drop it off there. There are 4 more locations going up inside the city of Flint at the fire stations where you can drop your absentee ballot off. But if you choose to mail it back, please mail it back by October 19th to ensure its arrival to the local city clerk's office so your ballot can be counted. And so it's very important understanding your ballot. And I'm going to tee up our congressman as well, because we have a lot of things on our ballot, and that ballot can be very intimidating for people if you're not a frequent voter. It's 2 sides to your ballot. They have a partisan side and a nonpartisan side. We also have statewide questions, proposals and questions on that ballot, and also your judicial areas on your ballot, and even the Board of Regents, Board of Trustees for your colleges and universities. And some people don't always understand all of the categories and how to fill out your ballot correctly. And so, Congressman Kildee, can you lend some expertise, being a person that's been on many ballots, but also you've been engaged in the political scene for many decades now. So, Congressman Kildee, can you help us understand the ballot and what's going to be on our ballot that we're facing this November 4th?
For sure. I mean, obviously this election is a critical election for the whole country because first and foremost on the ballot, we've got the election of a president and a vice president. And before I go further, I think we all know what's happening with President Trump. He and his wife, First Lady Melania Trump, have contracted COVID-19. The president's in the hospital. We don't wish any ill will on any person. We want him to be safe. We want him to be healthy. And so all of our thoughts and prayers are with the First family, knowing that every family in America is just as important as the first family. So we need to make sure that we make good decisions for all of us. And that's a choice that we have coming up here in November. What path do we want to take forward? And I think what we know is that we have a very serious choice as to what kind of country we're going to be. That choice is partly decided by who the president is, but the rest of the choices on the ballot affect it as well. We have a race for United States Senator. Senator Gary Peters is up for re-election. He's challenged by John James. We have a race for Congress. I am on the ballot. We have races for state officials, state representatives, of course. And Neeley, you're familiar with that.
Yes.
We also have county races, county commissioners, county sheriff, prosecutor, clerk register, drain commissioner. I mean, all these positions, sheriff, all these positions are on the ballot. And then local offices, township offices as well. But then, as you said, we have other choices to make. We have judicial nominations on the nonpartisan ballot, from local judges right up to the Michigan Supreme Court. And of course, we learned yesterday just how important the Supreme Court can be, because the Michigan Supreme Court took action to strip away from the governor some of the life-saving authority that she has utilized in order to protect people from COVID. So these elections have consequences for us. We also have ballot initiatives. Here in this state, we get to make choices as a people without the legislature, but as a people directly. And so we have a couple of ballot initiatives. And I'll finish by saying how important those initiatives can be. Because in 2018, when people voted that whole ballot and voted for the ballot initiatives, they passed a ballot initiative that has, almost as if the people of Michigan could see the future, has allowed us now to have those absentee ballots come in early for no reason, allowed for same-day voter registration. So if you're not registered, you can register right up until Election Day now. It has allowed for the kind of voting that allows people to vote safely without fear of having to stand in a long line, put themselves at risk at getting COVID. But they can take that absentee ballot, fill it out, and mail it in. We wanted to mail it by October 19th. Or if they can't, they can just take it to a drop box. Or, even better, if they choose, can go to City Hall on any day between now and the election, walk in, ask for their ballot, cast that ballot right there, that absentee ballot, right in the safety of City Hall without a big crowd, without a whole lot of lines, and have that ballot go in right now. So we want people to vote the whole ballot. We also want people to vote as safely as they can, and we think the best way to do that is to get your absentee ballot. If you haven't gotten it yet, you can go online and request your absentee ballot. That ballot will arrive by mail. And if you can get it back in before the 19th by the U.S. mail, that's great. If not, you can take it in or take it to a drop box. So vote the whole ballot and vote safely.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, because we want to make sure we make this process a very easy process, but people always don't understand all the things that's on the ballot and what it really means to them in their lives. And so right now we have political science professor Paul Rozycki here to tell us about these things, and also we'll be having express parking inside the city of Flint, right in front of City Hall. So parking will be free. I'm going to waive all parking fees the week of the election, and also I have 2 free express parking spots that you don't have to pay to come in and drop your ballot off or actually cast your vote. So we're going to make it easy for you to do so in the city of Flint if you choose to come down to City Hall or one of the 4 fire stations or right in front of the police department. We have secure boxes there. Your ballot will be secured there, and pickup will be done by the clerk's office. But Paul, on our ballots that we're facing now coming up, we have 2 statewide proposals, and could you tell us a little bit about those statewide proposals so people can actually understand what that is and what that really means to them?
Sure. As a matter of fact, I'm glad the Congressman mentioned that. My ballot is in front of me, and I think I'll be filling it. My first time I voted absentee is this year, and I suspect we'll be dropping them off this weekend. So some important things coming up, obviously. As you say, there are 2 statewide proposals on the ballot, And frankly, they've gotten very little coverage, which is sort of surprising. I've heard almost no, I see no little advertising and no very little public mention of these proposals. The first one, Proposal 21, is perhaps the most complex one. And frankly, I'm a little surprised it wasn't handled in some legislative committee. Basically, what it does, there are funds from the oil and gas tax revenues that are allocated to several environmental committees: the Michigan State Parks Endowment Fund and the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. However, as things are set up now, those donations, those funding will cap out at a certain level, about $800 million. If Proposal 21 passes, what that would do is basically allow steps for each of the various funds. But the bottom line is that if this passes, it would basically say that those oil and gas taxes would go permanently to environmental activities, whereas now they are capped at a certain level, and after it reaches that level, which is probably in about 3 years, that the funds would go to the general fund. So it's a change in how the taxes would be applied. Currently, they're capped, and once they reach the cap, they go to the general fund. If Proposal 21 passes, they would then permanently go to both of these environmental funds. So as I say, when you look at the thing in the ballot, it's complex, but it's basically a choice between whether you want to cap these environmental funds at a certain level, or whether you want to leave them wide open so the taxes go to them into the future. That's maybe the most complex one of all.
Well, that's a mouthful. Even
Sure.
when you explain this, one of the things that we have, especially in underserved communities, is that we have these ballot questions that people really don't understand. Exercising the greatest right we have as American citizens is the right to vote. People sometimes want to keep you dumbed down because they don't want you to really be educated about what goes on the ballot. And one of the things that we do here is try to educate a constituency up so they'll become more residential type of voters, that they're going to be there every single time versus spot hit elections. And so we want to make sure everybody gets educated. So if anybody's listening to this show today, please explain to them, as Paul Rozycki explained to them, about Proposal 21. And there's another statewide proposal. Paul, can you get into that as well?
Sure. That one is a bit more straightforward and frankly leaves you to understand for most voters, I think. Basically, it would require Proposal 22, the second statewide proposal, would require a search warrant in order to access a person's electronic data or electronic communication. Now, again, from what I've read, frequently there's been kind of a debate about whether or not you needed a search warrant for these things, although many police agencies did often get search warrants, but it wasn't crystal clear in the Michigan Constitution. So if 22 should pass, what it would do would make it very clear that before they can access your electronic data, electronic communication, that a traditional search warrant would be required. And it makes that principle clearer. And again, what's interesting about that is that there too, I have not seen a lot of coverage, and I've received no advertising for or against that proposal either. And these are both pretty important issues on the ballot that need to be discussed. In fact, I'm going to add one more thought. One interesting thing that occurred to me with the rise in absentee voting this year especially is that now voters will have the chance to research these things. Sometimes when voters walk into a poll, kind of cold turkey on election day, and they may know who they're voting for president and for Congress and for the Senate and a few other things, but then they see these often complicated ballot proposals, they're confused. Well, now when you get your ballot in the mail, you can sit down and not only read through it, but go to a website and learn a bit more about each of these things, so you can really become much more informed voters. So I think that's one real advantage of the rise in absentee and mail-in voting.
Right, and we want to make sure we're clear on this. This is a nonpartisan conversation talking about educating people on how to engage their ballot effectively with an open, educated mind for the proposals that they're facing today. And also, a lot of misconception is about the Board of Regents or the Board of Trustees for universities and colleges, and we're facing a couple of those on November 3rd's ballot. And can you explain to them why we vote on this? And I'm going to toss this back to Congressman Kildee, and Congressman Kildee, you can throw it over to Paul if you like. But the Board of Regents, Michigan State University, University of Michigan, Wayne State, and other colleges, why do we vote for the Board of Regents, and why is it voters facing that right now for those challenges in those areas?
Well, we have three major universities in the state of Michigan that under Michigan's Constitution are governed by separately elected boards. The other state institutions are governed by boards that are typically appointed by regents or trustees that are appointed by the governor. But in the case of Wayne State University, Michigan State University, and the University of Michigan, since they are our major universities, they have their own separately elected boards that govern the policies of those institutions. And so that's a choice that we made with the adoption of the Michigan Constitution. And so the voters have a direct role in the governance of those. Further, we also elect members to the State Board of Education. So there are four education boards, the three major universities and the State Board of Education. That State Board of Education, to an extent, shares policymaking authority with the executive and legislative branch of Michigan. But it has certain policymaking authority. And in the past, it's been somewhat controversial in that there have been members of the legislature that have attempted to eliminate the State Board of Education. I think for most of us, we like the idea of being able to directly elect people to those boards because it gives us a hand in their governance. So it's an important position. I think it's particularly important when it comes to the State Board of Education, but even for those college boards, it's important that people express themselves, and it has had, I think, a very positive effect on the stature of those institutions. They're all nationally known, and that's a good thing.
Right, and one of the biggest myths about voting is let's debunk a few of those together, and I'm gonna tap in for Dr. Verholden and also Dr. Reynolds. One of the biggest misconceptions about Michigan voters is that people that's been convicted of a crime that is now released from prison cannot vote. And Paul, do you want to take that one, or can those individuals vote in the state of Michigan?
Certainly, ex-felons who have served their time and served their penalty do have the right to vote. In fact, even those who may be incarcerated and who have not been convicted of anything also have the right to vote. So no, you're exactly right. Very often people are discouraged in those categories from voting, but those who have had those criminal penalties and have taken care of them do have the right to vote. And unfortunately, there's been all too many moves around the nation to discourage that kind of voting.
Right, and just to be clear, that people that are in jail but that has not been sentenced or convicted of a crime still has the right to be registered to vote and absolutely vote, and they should.
That's correct.
But what they should do is request an absentee ballot if they're currently in lockup and vote that way. No one's going to be able to leave jail to participate in the vote. Now, if you have been sentenced and convicted and are incarcerated, you will not be eligible to vote until you are released from prison. Now, also another question. This is another question that's being posed. Can people on probation or parole vote, Paul?
As far as that's a good question. As far as I know, I believe they can. Now, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe they can.
Well, this is a great day when I get to correct a professor, but you're absolutely right. But thank you. They can participate in the vote, and they absolutely should participate in the greatest American right that we have as citizens of this great country. And one of the things, sometimes personally, I find it offensive when people try to not educate me, but try to direct my vote. Right? I believe in educating everybody up to a position where they can actually make an educated decision for themselves. providing them with the necessary tools in order to be able to go out and cast a vote that serves them and their family and their agenda firmly, not to be able to get steered because they may not know what is going on. And that's why this show is so important, to be able to educate people about some of the things that's on their ballot they're going to be facing. And also, when you have some places in hard to comprehend areas or low literacy levels throughout our country, sometimes they sneak things through. And we have to be very mindful of these things. And so there's going to be a lot of chicanery through this election, because this is a pivotal election for our country. And both sides sometimes may not give all the information, but it's incumbent upon us to do our due diligence and to go out and find the information that's necessary for us to cast an educated vote. And also, Dr. Reynolds, can you add to this process about why it is so important to be educated about voting?
Oh, yes. Just like the census, you can knock yourself out of commission for 10 years by not responding. The vote is similar. You can knock yourself out of the process by 2 to 4 years by not speaking your voice. And everything, positive things that we have gained during this crisis is that we have voted for responsible leadership that has made sure that we have the resources we need as a community to protect our families and neighbors.
Right. And one of the things is, I'm going to toss it to Dr. Furholden as it relates to the numbers of COVID patients inside the state of Michigan and our country are growing. And we now know that there's no one exempt from this deadly virus, COVID-19, that it reaches everyone to the highest level, whether they're engaged in proactive activity to protect themselves and their family or not. This has even reached the White House of this country. And so we have to be very mindful of protecting ourselves. And Dr. Furholden, do you want to add to that about continuing protecting ourselves from this pandemic in our country?
I think what we've seen with the president himself testing positive, according to all the reports, is that nobody is exempt. We've all grown weary of COVID. We've, been run down. We want to get back to some version of the new normal. But the virus doesn't take a break. It doesn't care about our, wanting to travel or, any of the things that impact us. And so I really do encourage people now more than ever. And I would not wish this virus on anybody. Again, my prayers for the president, first lady, and all those that have been impacted in the White House and the government, just generally across the world. But the virus is not taking a break, and so the extent to which we practice personal responsibility and then really come together as a community to keep ourselves and others protected is our best defense right now. So the rates in Michigan, we've seen major narrowing of the disparity. Everybody saw when this virus first hit, Michigan was very forthcoming. We had a threefold disparity for African Americans in COVID deaths and cases. We've narrowed that disparity, almost eliminated it, but it was a function of all of the great efforts from our governor and our great leaders like you, Mayor Neeley. And if we don't stay the course, what we'll see is a turning of the tide. We're doing everything that we can to prevent a resurgence and a second epidemic wave, but that's going to require ongoing policy, good practices, and people practicing personal responsibility. So I just encourage people, now more than ever, it's important that we stay the course and practice the protocols and do everything we can to keep ourselves and our community safe.
And though we find ourselves at the intersection of crisis in this community with things of the water crisis, this pandemic, social unrest, we are a determined and resilient community. And I always say in leadership roles as a mayor of the city of Flint, we can work through everything, but we have to work together in a positive way. And that's why I love our Congressman, Dan Kildee. From the time that I first engaged politics on an elected level, he's always reached out to help educate and help talk to me about certain things and guide me through certain troubled things and as far as procedurally working forth in this arena. And so I always say you have 3 P's here: prayer, plan, and partnership. Prayer, plan, and partnership. And I want to thank Dan Kildee, because as we end the portion of our radio broadcast, but thank you, Congressman Kildee, for your partnership, not only with me, but residents of this community and residents of our nation, making sure that we are strong and we can stand. And I think it goes way back to your Flint Northern days, where that was placed into your heart and into your spirit. I want to always plug Flint Northern, but thank you for your partnership. And I'm going to give you the last few words as we look at what we need to do. But the partnership is a combination of things we need to do. Your 2020 census form, you make sure that you complete that form. We have an extension on the deadline of that. If you have not completed that form, please take the time out to fill your form out. $3 billion for this community over the next decade is important. If you have not been registered to vote, please go out there and get educated how to vote and who to vote for, your issues, your family, and your quality of life. Also, making sure that we participate in making sure no one disrespects our home by throwing garbage in it. The fight on blight is engaged, and we want you to be a part of the team. And so I toss it to you now, Congressman Kildee, for the last few words for our radio broadcast. And then we go into our Facebook Burst program. We're going to hit more of the pandemic and what we need to do to protect ourselves moving forward. Congressman.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. It's always good to be on with fellow Flint Northern Vikings. We are a special group of people, and we hang together. So thank you for that. You made the point very well, and I think this has been a good discussion. Often in our community, and this is true of many communities, people feel like their lives have kind of gotten beyond their control. We have this pandemic. We obviously had the Flint water crisis. We have problems that we see that sometimes we feel we have no power to overcome. But that's really not the case. We do have, as individuals, we have power. Our constitutional form of government grants that power to the people. But it's only manifest when people take that power and exercise it. Being a citizen is the highest public office anybody will ever hold. But it only works when people exercise that power. And the most fundamental way to do that is through the right to vote. I served for almost the whole time I've been in Congress with a good friend, the late John Lewis. John fought and nearly died for the right to vote. My personal commitment is to honor John's legacy by making sure that the right that he worked so hard to protect is exercised by those people that he served. So let's honor his legacy and the legacy of all those who fought so hard for the right to vote by exercising that right. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you for your service, your longstanding service to this community, and thank you for your partnership in a positive way. We also have to remain positive in our engagement, because there is a lot of people that's around that wants to pick your pocket, take your power away from you for their own agenda, and we cannot allow that to happen. As the Congressman said, the greatest service that we can provide is to one another. And so we want to make sure that we do that at the highest levels, and from the local levels to the county levels to the state levels and also to the federal levels. We want to make sure that we protect our families and have a great quality of life, no matter if you're black, white, rich, or poor. We need to make sure that our families are taken care of, and that's what we do here. And we're unapologetic about saving lives and improving the quality of lives. We want to make sure that we strive as American citizens all together. And as we get ready to cap our radio broadcast, we move into our Facebook Burst program, and then we're going to excuse the Congressman. I know he has an action-packed day today, but remember, we have 3 up and active testing sites throughout the city of Flint. We have it at Bethel United Methodist Baptist Church on Ballinger Highway. We have it at Word of Life Dr. Reynolds Church, and also Macedonia. And so no longer do you have to go through the aggressive piece of a nasal swab, but you now can have a saliva swab. We need to work together in order to get us back to a standard of living which we all can appreciate and enjoy. But until then, understand this, that no one's exempt from this deadly virus, COVID-19, that we're doing everything possible, and we need your help and your support as residents of this great community and of this great nation. Thank you, Dan Kildee. Paul Rozycki, stand by for our Facebook Burst program. Also, Dr. Furholden and Dr. Reynolds as we move. Thank you, guys, and God bless WFLT listeners as we move forward to our Facebook Burst program. Stand by.
Thank you for tuning in.
With our Facebook Burst program, I'm unsure who we just lost. I know we lost Congressman Dan Kildee on our radio broadcast. Do I have Paul Rozycki still with us?
Yep, I'm still here.
Dr. Furholden, are you still there?
I'm here, Mary.
All right, Dr. Reynolds, are you still there?
I am present.
All right. Well, we got enough for our great first Facebook Burst program. Understanding your ballot is the topic of of the show today. Educating people up so they can make great decisions for themselves as they go to the ballot on November 3rd, or early voting is taking place now. We want people to be able to execute upon their greatest right that we have as American citizens, unimpeded by many things. The opportunity to be able to turn that ballot in, and also unimpeded by bad information. And so we want to make sure that we step out there boldly to let people know what's going on. But we definitely have to do it safely because we are on uncharted territories as it relates to this pandemic and COVID-19. Dr. Furholden, can you tell us where we are as a state through this pandemic?
Has helped us turn the tide. And I give people, I call it the cautionary tale, right? So it's like if you do something that promotes progress and then you stop doing that, well, predictably, you'll stop the progress. We have to stay vigilant. If we want to keep those community case rates down, if we want to be effective in turning the tide in communities where we start to see an uptick in cases or an uptick in hospitalization, we've got to continue to do the work. We've got to have good policies in place. We've got to also understand what the community prevalence is. We've got to make sure that we continue with our community-wide testing. I think Flint is a great example. Our testing capacity right now even exceeds the demand for testing. And so I do want to encourage people. What we've learned from what happened with the president is if you have any suspicion that you may be positive, or you know that you've recently been exposed to somebody who is positive, you need to go get tested. The very first thing you need to do if you figure out or find out that you could potentially be exposed is you need to self-quarantine. You need to self-quarantine, you need to get tested. You need to reveal that when you go get tested that you've recently been exposed to somebody who tested positive. And you have to self-quarantine until those results come back. And if the results come back negative, you actually have to stay in self-quarantine and get retested. There's an incubation period for this virus. Before you get enough of the virus in your system that you will show up positive on a test, you still can infect others potentially, and it's important that you keep yourself and others safe. So I really want to encourage people to utilize the great resources that we put in place in Flint and Genesee County and all across the state. People need to maximize that community testing. Our best strategies right now, in the absence of a vaccine and in the absence of truly holistic community, state, nationwide protocol, is everybody has to do their part. These basic protections of masking up, practicing good hand hygiene, doing everything that you can personally in case you are impacted or do become infected, that you give your body and yourself the best chance to recover. Quit smoking, minimize drinking, eat the best high nutrient diet possible. Try to get 30 minutes of physical activity in every day. Limit your exposure to other people. And if you have become exposed, no problem. self-quarantine. Get tested. If you're negative, get retested and continue to honor the protocol. The shift that we've seen, we can maintain if everybody does their part.
Absolutely, and so I'm going to toss it over to Dr. Reynolds right now, giving our protocol about keeping yourself safe. Because, I was watching and looking at Facebook the other day, and I was very disturbed. I was watching a party, a young millennial party that was going on, and I saw no mask, no social distancing, and it was as if we were back in a total state of being without COVID-19 on our landscape. I was very disturbed by that, and can you help me, Dr. Reynolds, remind people what we need to do moving forward to protect ourselves?
When I was a young man, a young boy, my parents used to say to me, don't do what you see those folks doing on TV. And it was for many reasons, and one of them is we have a lot to lose by being foolish. So when you look at what's going on in certain leadership circles, that is not your example. What we need to do is clear and simple. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Avoid crowds. And if you go to a place and you've done those things and you see other people are not following those instructions, leave, because you're protecting your family, you're protecting your relatives, and you're protecting your neighbors. Leave. There's nothing that makes you a coward by doing so. You're recognizing your responsibility to protect yourself and your neighbors. So the other level of responsibility is how do we prevent the diseases that are already out there? And most important is to get your immunizations. Right now, we're pressing for the flu shot. More people need to get their influenza shot. It's available now. For us grandparents and caretakers, it's time to get our whooping cough booster shot. Many of us got it back in elementary school, high school, but now is the time to get our booster shot so we don't transmit it to our children or our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren. So too much has been given, and we have been given much by our Heavenly Father. We must act responsibly in order to assure that we protect the next generation.
Absolutely, and one thing we have to do is make sure we protect ourselves and also our rights. Our greatest American rights that we have in this country is the right to vote and a right to choose. In the Bible, if we go back to Genesis and we look at the first chapter, probably the 27th verse, when God gave us dominion over things, but we have the freedom to choose. And if you're of African American descent, the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment spoke very heavily in our Constitution about the emancipation of people of color in this country and giving us the right to participate fully in this country. And so we have to understand what that is and what that magnificent right is, and we have to empower ourselves by engaging it with an open, knowledgeable mind as we move forward. I cannot tell you enough about that. And if you're a woman, you should know that the 19th Amendment, suffrage, the right for women to vote and participate in that process in this country, that we all have a responsibility to engage it. Don't let anyone steal your right from you. Do not forfeit your right. Do not allow people to tell you, guide you, shepherd you into a place that you do not know or understand, but allow them to educate you and help you come to your own conclusion and your own decision, unmotivated or swayed. Education is important. Being educated is important. Being educated about your most important right is important. Don't let them pick your pockets for your money, and don't let them picket your mind for the greatest thing that we have, and that's the ability to choose and make a decision for ourselves, a God-given right in this country, as well as an American right in our society. So we kick it to Paul Rozycki, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit passionate about that, and I don't get.
Oh, that's well deserved, Mayor. It's well deserved passion, and it's really critically important. I mean, it's important every year, but this year more than ever, I think it is. And as you mentioned before, there's all kind of attempts around to discourage folks from voting. There are rumors that if you vote absentee, that somehow somebody's going to gather the information and use it to collect debts or enforce old warrants. I mean, these are all false rumors that are attempting to discourage folks from voting. There's a lot of attempts to do that. I can say this year more than ever, it's critical to get out there and make your voice heard, study the ballot, and become part of the public voice of this country.
Right, and absolutely. So the proposals on this ballot, the very first proposal, Proposal 21, is very complex in comprehending exactly what this is if people don't understand it fully. And even I, a person who is engaged in politics, sometimes have to read these things thoroughly through a couple of times, trying to get to a conclusion, to have an understanding about what does this mean for me and my family or my community. And so can you help people understand Proposal 21 very succinctly at the end of it, what it is and what does it mean to our community?
Certainly, yeah. As you say, there are two proposals on the ballot that we'll be voting on statewide, and far and away the most complicated one is Proposal 20-1. And what it does basically is this. I mean, there are revenues collected from oil and gas bonuses and rentals and royalties and fees, and they have gone to a variety of natural resource boards and trust funds around the state. However, as things stand now, at some level, the amount those commissions can collect are capped at about $800 million. And the guess is that in about 3 decades, that cap will be reached. And at that point, as things now stand, that money would then go to the general fund. If Proposal 21 passes, that would assure that all those revenues collected would go to a variety of natural resource committees and commissions. So as I say, I mean, if you look at the proposal, there's a lot of numbers, and it's a very convoluted thing in terms of how they allocate the money. But the basic idea is that if you're voting for this, you're saying you want all of that gas and oil revenue to go to natural resource funds. If you vote no, you're saying that it's okay to cap it at some point and then let that same money go to the general fund. But as you say, it's a very complicated and phrased proposal with lots of numbers and lots of allocations about certain kinds of monies to various natural resource projects. But the basic idea is relatively simple, but it's not very clear when you look at it on the ballot. So it's an important issue. And as I say, I was surprised. I've not heard a single word about that from any committee or any group, or I've not received a flyer in the mail about that, one way or the other. So that's the first of the statewide proposals. The second one is in many ways a lot simpler than that. Basically, what it would do would require a search warrant before they can search your electronic data or electronic communication. Now, again, frequently many police agencies have already done that anyhow, but not all of them have, and it's not been crystal clear. So what this basically makes it very clear that before the police can search your electronic data, that a traditional search warrant is required. But there, too, I'm surprised that on that I've not seen anybody coming out in favor of or against that in a public way. Compared to most years, these are two relatively invisible proposals for all the other attention the ballot is getting.
Right, and I tell you this is that, especially in the black and brown communities, every election cycle, especially in this particular one, they try to herd people to the ballot box to engage the voting process, which is good. We all should do that, especially people of African American descent, because we had to fight through Jim Crow, literacy tests, poll taxes, and everything to be able to get to this particular point that we can vote.
That's right.
But moreover, we should be engaging and educating the public en masse about what they're going to be facing on the ballot. When I was over the Legislative Black Caucus of the state of Michigan, I wrote a tutorial for communities of color to educate them, a high-powered civics class that we still can provide now And I probably will try to do it on an online basis here in the next week while early voting has already started, so they can understand what they're going to be facing on this November ballot as they go to vote. One thing that people do is they look for guidance from the pulpit, they look for guidance from their union, they look for guidance in many different places, but make sure when you look for guidance, do your own research as well. And so when Dr. Verholden and Dr. Reynolds were going through college, I'm sure they didn't look on the person's paper to the right or left, when they were taking an exam, because when they have to actually perform in their profession, they're going to have to know what to do, and they're going to have to uphold their own minds to make sure they're doing the right things, because medicine is a practice. They're practicing medicine and science and engaging these processes. And so we have to do this, approach our ballot as a science. We have to do our homework and our due diligence, learning and seeking out the better answers. Now, also, the Board of Regents is going to be on this ballot. Can you explain to them what the Board of Regents looks like and what that really is?
Sure. There are three university boards on the ballot and the State Board of Education. And the Board of Regents of University of Michigan, Wayne State, and Michigan State are basically the governing boards of those universities, the three major universities in Michigan. And the key thing is here that the voters have got a choice to decide how their major universities are governed. And these are on the ballot every year, but I think it's fair to say this year, more than ever, those may be more important. And I say that because of the whole COVID pandemic that's going on. These universities are going to have to make some tough choices. We've seen it already about whether they're going to have football and whether they're going to have online classes or classes in person and everything else. So there'll be some real tough choices, probably some very hard economic choices to be made at the three major universities. So the folks who are running, who are elected by running for those boards, are going to be the key individuals to decide the future of University of Michigan, Wayne State, and Michigan State University. On top of that, there's also the statewide school board that makes major policies for all the K-12 education system. And I should also mention that, by the way, here in Flint, we've also got an election for the Flint School Board going on, as well as Mott Community College. And the same thing I said about the statewide universities apply there. They're going to face some tough choices as they face the pandemic crisis and some serious financial considerations. So again, the folks who are running for the Mott College Board and the Flint School Board, and I should also mention in the Elk County area too, there's a lot of other school boards up for election as well. But so there's really some critical choices to be made that are going to matter an awful lot for the education from K-12 through the universities and beyond in Michigan.
Right, and when we vote as citizens, there's a percentage of a ballot, especially in this time, and even it's going to be relevant to November 3rd's ballot, that probably 50% of the ballot, people probably really has a good understanding about what's going on. And the drivers, usually to get people to motivated to vote, is usually the top of the ticket, the presidential election, the gubernatorial election, and those type of positions there. And usually on the undercard, in the nonpartisan portions, you have your judicial and all those other school board and board of regents in those areas. And so can you tell people what straight party voting means and how to do that correctly, Paul?
Sure. Yeah, based upon a proposal we had 2 years ago, we do allow straight party voting in Michigan. There was an attempt to block that a while back. But if you choose, you can go in and you can vote a straight party ticket for all the Democrats or all the Republicans, or even in third party choices if you want to go that way as well. However, if you vote a straight party ticket, all you're voting for is the folks who are running on a partisan ballot. You're not voting for the judges. You're not voting for the proposals or any of the other nonpartisan issues that are out there. So, as I say, even if you're voting straight party ticket, that's not the whole ballot. You want to still go out there and you want to vote for here in Flint for the Flint School Board, for the proposals for Mott Community College, For the judicial races, all of those are nonpartisan races, and they won't be covered if you're voting on a straight party ticket. And I should mention also the judicial races fall in the same category. So as I said, the straight party ticket takes care of a lot of things, but if that's all you do, you'll be leaving almost half your ballots blank. So you want to be sure and go through the judicial races, the local school boards, the proposals as well, because those are critically important too.
Right. I want to jump into the public health strategies to empower voters. So I'm going to go with Dr. Furholden. Dr. Furholden, how can we have a strategy to empower voters through the public health vessel?
Well, thank you, Mayor Neeley. So, public health, we deal with the level of the community, level of the population. So I appreciate all the points that were raised. And I just want to underscore, the president is not the only thing on the ballot. I think many of us have taken the bait and gotten sucked into, in large part because we're at home or over consuming media, we've gotten wrapped up. But the points that are being made are important. There's so many more things on the ballot. So I think people need to really be empowered to vote. I've been encouraging people to do one of four things, all of these four things. The first thing is check your status. Voter suppression is not new in our country and in our world. Check your status. I've been directing people to the Transformative Justice Coalition website, vote.org. You can go to that site, vote.org. You can check your status and make sure nothing wonky has happened and that you haven't been purged from the roll. If you have been purged from the roll, the first thing you got to do is make sure you're back on the roll. Not just you, but you and others. The second thing I've been telling everybody is plan your vote and vote your plan. Everybody needs a voting plan at this point. You need to know whether or not you're voting by mail ballot, absentee ballot. If you plan on doing in-person voting, there's lots of recommendations for you to be empowered and prepared to do that and do that safely. We know for many people, because we are in a pandemic, that is not a safe option for people. So fine, just plan your vote and then vote your plan. Third, I'm telling everybody, vote early. Vote early. I've had many of my friends and colleagues who've gone down, they've gone down to the clerk's office, they've gotten their vote cast. Lots of people have also been the credible delivery person for people in their families who are not able to put themselves in harm's way. You could also be a source of support for other people in your life, and you could be the person that delivers their ballot and drops it off at the box. You can take a picture, you can send it to them, you can take it back and show them you put their ballot in the box. And then also, I've been telling people, make sure you're covered, but then also help 10 other people. Help 10 other people, whether it be an elderly loved one, a sick or shut-in loved one, somebody who is not adept at the issues. If you have the capacity, I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I'm just making sure that people have what they need to vote. We have so often, so many ballots get purged because they're filled out improperly, they're not filled out completely, etc. You could be that credible, trusted, auditor for somebody. You could be somebody who drops ballots off. You could be somebody who helps a loved one make sense of all of the different options that are on the ballot. There are many ways for us to get involved. And then the last thing I want to point to that you talked about was this marginalization of some of our vulnerable populations, especially the prison population. There's a new 50-state report that has been issued by the Prison Policy Initiative and the Rainbow Push Coalition, and it's called Eligible But Excluded, a guide to removing the barriers to jail voting. We have many of our citizens and many of our residents who are in local jails who have the right to vote, but it's not an unfettered right. They basically have been denied the option to vote. This is a really great strategic document around how we can normalize voting from that jail population. So people can go to prisonpolicy.org if they want to check that out and see how they can get activated. I know in Clinton, Genesee County, we've got a lot of people who are really active in this landscape. I think now more than ever, again, I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I'm just impressing upon people everything that we think matters about our world and about our community starts with you casting your vote. It is your voice. It is your opportunity to chime in. And we don't want any of our residents left out of that process. So I'm encouraging people to go to prisonpolicy.org, check out that report if they want to be a champion for voting amongst our jail population.
Right, and one thing about this, and we're going to kick it back to Dr. Reynolds, real protest, fruitful protest is just not about marching with a bullhorn, using profane language up and down the street. We have to have a plan in order to be able to execute upon a better tomorrow. Planning a real protest begins at the ballot box. You have to vote your agenda. You have to be able to cast your vote there to be able to effectuate some level of change. This is not something that's new today, but this is something that's always been engaged in through our civil rights movement, through every particular movement in this country. It begins at the ballot box. And so protest, Dr. Reynolds, and the ballot box.
Well, you pushed me to a point, so I'll speak plainly.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes to talk about by any means necessary. And usually they see this picture of people in the street or breaking windows or whatever. But by any means necessary means you start with the tools that you have at hand. One is the census. Two is the vote, to register and vote. And if you ignore those things, you're stepping out on a battlefield and you're already behind in the game. So let's think beyond the rhetoric, or think deeply when we say things like by any means necessary, and we use all those tools that are available. And I'll go back to my younger days. There was a speech given in Detroit by Malcolm X where he talked about the ballot or the bullet. He was not advocating get the bullet. He was pushing for get the ballot. And if we ignore, I will repeat myself, if we ignore that tool, we have fallen into a trap that sets us face to face against the overwhelming power of the police department. I'll speak plainly. I've lived in Detroit, and I lived in a house where during the 1967 rebellion, an M50 machine gun was fired 4 blocks away. That bullet went through one wall and out the other. And why am I telling you this? What I'm saying is we do not need to put our community at unnecessary risk, or our families. We need to use those tools that are available, and we need to vote and organize and continue to speak up. And we have plenty of opportunities if you look at those names on the ballot.
Well, absolutely. And we have to be positive about our engagement with one another, working together and striving together in a positive fashion. The Bible tells us, how can two walk together unless they agree? So we need to be able to walk together in a positive way, engaging each other in the light of day, and not allowing those negative energies that come in to have a overcasting effect in our society. And so I tell you that, and I speak to that because many people are trying to pick your pocket. And when I say that, I mean taking your money, monetizing your suffering. They're trying to benefit from those things. Also, the power of your vote, the greatest American right that you have. People will try to magnify their agenda by coming to mislead you or guide you to their agenda and asking you to lend support to their agenda by way of your vote. I'm telling you to get educated about the way that you vote. Seek out the good information. Understand what is going on around you. Move toward the things that benefits you and your family. Engage your power and your vote in a way that makes your life better. Don't leave with a poor understanding of what you need to do. Understand what the Board of Regents are. Understand what proposals 2-1 is, or the statewide proposal. Understand who's sitting at the school board that's going to help educate your children. Understand that legislators are going to be moving in a way that's going to help support your family and your agenda. But we have to do so safely, making sure that we are here tomorrow, and making sure that tomorrow is better than it was today for us. Do your census form, protect yourself, and making sure that we're covered. Last word, Paul Rozycki.
I would just reaffirm everything you said. Be sure and get out to vote. It's a critical election. It's going to matter for all of us. Take the opportunity to be sure you vote, and don't let anybody discourage you.
Absolutely. With that, God bless. I love you, Mom. Won't be able to go to breakfast with you today, but I'm going to try to catch you for lunch. I love you. I love you. I love this community. Look for the unifying messages of us. Yes, was that Dr. Reynolds wanted to get something in? Oh, okay. I thought I heard you.
Yeah, I want to get one more thing in, Mayor Neeley, before we go too.
Yep, Dr. Furley, go ahead.
If people have not completed their census, it's not too late. Go to my2020census.gov. You can complete it online. It's not too late. We've still got great workers out pounding the pavement, trying to make sure that we all get counted and all of that. There's all kinds of things that people need to know. If you have not been counted, go to my2020census.gov and complete your census.
Absolutely. Next week's show, environmental justice, making sure that we cast our vote, getting ready, prepared. 4 voting sites at our local fire stations, also at City Hall to drop your absentee ballot. If you're going to mail it back, make sure you do so by October 19th to ensure our local clerk gets your ballot. Get educated and be positive in our engagements with one another. Thank you, Paul Rozycki. Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you, Dr. Furholden. And thank you, Congressman Kildee, for joining us this morning. And thank all of you. Love you, Mom. God bless. Thank you, guys.